Hi, folks. In this video, we discuss the ending of the film The Third Man. We've already talked about the positions, the philosophical state of the various characters. What I want to do is see if you can place them in a little chart. Kierkegaard's framework divides the realm of philosophical progress into three different areas: lower immediacy, ethical, and higher immediacy. Kierkegaard, of course, thinks that higher immediacy is the right way to go. That's the most authentic or greatest way for humans to live. I think Nietzsche, in many ways, is the opposite of Kierkegaard. Nietzsche is on this same dimension of finding meaning in our individual acts. But for Nietzsche, it's the artist, the free spirit, who thinks that Kierkegaardian commitments, ultimate commitments, are antithetical to what the free spirit ought to be doing. And so I think within Kierkegaard's framework, if Kierkegaard ever met a Nietzschean, he would just say they're in the realm of lower immediacy. So in some ways, we can place both Kierkegaard and Nietzsche along this dimension. And then within the ethical universal dimension, what I've given you here is a way of being like an expert at it or being a naive fool at it. So you can actually have a deep understanding of universal commitments to others, or you can sort of have a myopic, foolish, simple-minded conception of what it means to have commitments to others. And in many ways, I think Beauvoir and Dostoevsky both give us different versions of this kind of universal or ethical concern. A kind of social positionality is essential to their philosophical views. And so that doesn't distinguish them. That just puts them both over here. There are different versions of what it means to be an expert. What Dostoevsky does give us in the Brothers Karamazov, I think, is a sense of what the naive, the ethical fool would look like, the person who doesn't actually have a deep understanding of how social commitments and social acknowledgement works. That's the character of Alexei at the start of the book. I mean, I don't want to say Alexei is a complete fool, because throughout the Brothers Karamazov, he shows potential, and the narrator of the book does realize that he is redeemable. But at the same time, he must go through a kind of character arc and transformation in order to become redeemed. So he does have a kind of simple-minded understanding of faith at the beginning of it that he has to move beyond in order to become attuned to what social demands and ethics really require of us. So I think Beauvoir and Dostoevsky give us different versions of expertise and what it really means to be attuned to others over here. And in the character of Alexei at the start of the Brothers Karamazov, we get the other sense of this spectrum, of this dimension. So here's another sort of chart. This is different than the other one I've given you, but it also gives us a sense of conceptual space and where characters can go. What I want you to now do is place all the characters of The Third Man. Where do you think the main characters of the film would locate? Okay, this might be easier. At least you know where I want to place them. Maybe you don't agree with it. And if you find counter evidence to any of these interpretations, I think it's great to talk about that and to see what there is there. But I said previously that Anna, the character of Anna, has one of these Kierkegaardian commitments. I actually think she's more of a knight of resignation than a knight of faith, but she clearly has a Kierkegaardian unconditional commitment. And I think Harry Lime is just a perfect Nietzschean sort of character who represents that complicated Nietzschean free spirit. Calloway, the major in the film, I think, is the ethical expert, and he is like the true moral center of the film. Holly Martins attempts to be the moral center of the film, but he's incompetent and a fool and is not actually the film's hero in any sense. Although, that's the way in which the movie The Third Man is like the perfect film noir, but at the same time, it is deeply critical of the tropes of detective film noir stories, because the detective here really is not some kind of hero story about his detective work. He's a fool. He continually messes things up. And in some ways, the crimes get solved, but not due to his competence in any way. Major Calloway basically has to wring Holly's participation out of him by showing him all the moral atrocities of Harry Lime. It's not like Holly Martins produced all this evidence and he had the kind of agency that solved the crimes or really led to resolution in the story. So this is sort of the setup and where we are so far. What I want to do is now use this to talk about the ending of the film, because if you understand this chart, you can understand what is so fascinating about the ending. And remember, after Harry Lime's funeral, which is, of course, his second funeral, he gets buried twice symbolically, or in a sense, in this film. Holly Martins waits for Anna down this long road. I mean, look at how beautiful this shot is. It's just incredible. This is classic composition, by the way. I mean, the depth of field is fantastic, and the point of interest here is rendered in the center, but also over here in the lower corner. And we are just waiting. Notice how long this take is. The camera just waits there, building the suspense and the anticipation. And then what does Anna do? She walks right by. She doesn't even nod or do anything. It is so wonderful. This is indeed the greatest ending to any film in the history of cinema. It is so perfect. What's so perfect about it is Anna cannot possibly end up with Holly Martins. This is where the traditional film noir or detective story, you know, the hero detective gets the girl, and all these sort of classic, you know, hackneyed heteronormative tropes of romance and detective work. And that is not what this story is, because this story is about the existential plights, what it means for a Kierkegaardian to be unconditionally committed to a Nietzschean, which is a pretty rough lot in life, is what we learn from understanding Anna's position, and how difficult it is to actually be ethically attuned to others, and what ethics demands of us, like Dostoevsky or Beauvoir says. And Holly Martins has none of that. He, in a sense, fails to be philosophical hero of any of the four philosophers we've looked at so far: Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, Beauvoir, or Dostoevsky. That's why I think he is such a fascinating character, because he simply fails along all four of those ways to live up to any of those ideals. Now, but the thing that I love the most about this film is that this ending, this perfect ending, I mean, what I love about the ending is that it is so perfect to all of the philosophy of the film, but it emerged by coincidence, or despite themselves, the filmmakers created the perfect ending to their film. Because this is just some shots. Remember how she has rebuked Holly Martins all along? Holly Martins can never be Harry Lime. If you have a Kierkegaardian commitment to a Nietzschean, you could never be satisfied with some, you know, some ethical fool, some myopic and incompetent person and dreary, sort of boorish person as Holly Martins. Impossible. From an existential point of view, it is incoherent. So this is what you have to know about the making of this film then. Originally, this is not what the ending was going to be. Graham Greene, who wrote almost a perfect screenplay, messed it up at the very end. So this is the ending that he wrote in the script. What happened was he falls in line and walks with her. They sort of walk together and become closer, and she puts her hand through his arm. And what Greene thinks this symbolizes is they are going to end up together. It is a kind of happy ending to this story. And of course, that would have been horrible. It would have ruined the whole film. I wouldn't even be showing the film right now. I would be so horrified if that would have been the ending to the film. It destroys the amazing philosophical achievement of the last 100 minutes. And thankfully, what happened was Carol Reed, when they were filming it, disagreed with this part of the script and said, no, we can't do that. But get this is the amazing twist. Carol Reed didn't rebuke this ending because he actually understood the philosophical positions of the characters. What he did was he thought it would be too immoral, as if her boyfriend was just buried and now she's running off with his old buddy. That's what they thought it was scandalous. That was the problem. So when Graham Greene was later interviewed about the making of the film and his experiences on the set and whatnot, he says, this is a quote from the interview: "One of the major disputes between me and Carol Reed concerned the ending, and he is proven triumphantly right." So what Graham Greene is saying here is Carol Reed was right to not link their arms at the ending of the film. And of course, Graham Greene finally has the sense to realize that indeed it was almost a perfect screenplay, but that had to get fixed. And this is the sense in which the collaboration is essential to the success of this movie. But what's so funny was their rationale. Listen to this. Reed felt that my ending, indeterminate though it was, because of course they don't embrace and kiss or something in some cheesy way, but nonetheless, the unspoken idea here is then they are going to find solace in each other, and the romance has begun. Reed, and then seemingly Greene's understanding is that would be too cynical. So we're going to just leave it up in the air, but they still think they're going to get together. It just can't be that fast. Or what was wrong with it is because it would be immorally cynical for her to simply walk out of the funeral and then join and strike up a romance with his best pal. And of course, that's not what's wrong here whatsoever. What's wrong here is Anna's philosophical position makes it incoherent, inconceivable that she would meet up and find any kind of relationship with a character like Holly Martins. It is impossible. It would completely ruin her Kierkegaardian position. A Knight of Resignation could never do such a thing. Or to think of it this way, Anna has achieved something very deep, something that's essential. She has achieved a kind of meaning in her life because of this commitment. Of course, it is not, I think in my opinion, it's not turned out to be that of a Knight of Faith. It's that of a Knight of Resignation. But that gives you a shirt of steel where you have a kind of meaning in your life. And you don't need, some little fling with a character like Holly Martins in order to find meaning in her life. That would be impossible. She couldn't even do it the way that Woman from Nevers has a fling with the man from Hiroshima. Because of course, the Woman from Nevers is totally different. Holly Martins is totally different from the man from Hiroshima. The man from Hiroshima is actually ethically exemplary. He is the kind of person who lives deeply authentically, whereas Holly Martins is just a dupe. So somebody who's in tune with the grief and the difficulties of life could never find solace in somebody so foolish as Holly Martin. Meiji, it just doesn't make sense. So in that sense, I'm so glad that despite their misunderstanding of what the ending of the film ought to actually be and why, they really did get it right. And this actually is a philosophically perfect film. Okay, thanks.